in a high school class project, my teacher told me it's unrealistic being a CEO. It's been my dream to be a CEO since I was 10. So I told her, it is realistic. Follow me on my journey to learn what it takes to become a CEO. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Realistic CEO Podcast. Today I'm here with Lindsay. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time while you're dating.
You came out here. I'm so impressed by this entire setup and your book and magazine. It's really amazing work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you do here at Applied Mortgage?
Yeah, definitely. So most of the time when people go and they want to buy a house, they don't necessarily have $500,000 cash sitting around to buy it. So they've got to figure out how can they actually come up with enough money to buy a house. Oftentimes that's coupled with getting a loan in order to buy it, getting a mortgage. So most of what we do is helping people strategize, learn about their financials, think about their goals, and figure out, all right, based on my goals, based on my financials, what mortgage programs are available that are going to help actually get into that home.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
I can, yeah. My journey where I got here started probably before I could even walk, because actually my dad owned the business originally. Not that long ago. He wasn't quite an owner yet, but I'd follow him around. I have a brother that's a year younger than I am. And we both saw that my dad came home every day so fulfilled from the work he was doing, helping people with mortgages, helping them get the American dream, buying a home. And so I knew really from an early age that I wanted to do that. I also knew when he actually opened the business officially, I think I was about 12, and saw him go through that process. It made me, I think in that moment, understand what entrepreneurship really is and see that extreme ownership and pride that comes along with being able to really build and start your own legacy. As soon as I was officially able to work here at 16, I started, and I like to joke and say you could never get rid of me. He's since retired and I manage the group now, but it was a good long time that we worked together, probably about 15 years. And then the last few years, I've been able to kind of run with it and put my own spin on things.
So what was it like growing up seeing your dad in his business to the point you realized this is something that you truly enjoyed and wanted to do?
Yeah. I think that I don't know that I knew right from the beginning that I wanted to do this. I felt a lot of pressure, right? Because my dad was really successful in what he did. Always the number one loan officer in the area, meaning he helped the most people. He also, the way we've always run things is with a lot of focus on the community. And my dad's very charismatic. He's out in the community. He's helping people, volunteering on boards, donating money, doing all this stuff. And so when I first started and I thought, okay, I'm 16. Then when I was 18 and decided like, all right, I'm going to stick around. I'm going to actually do this. I had to figure out I couldn't be my dad, right? What am I going to be? And so I think it took me a little while to realize I like this work and I'm good at it, but how am I going to really differentiate, find my own way through? And I think that's the piece that's always a little bit of a work in progress. And also I think the fun part of being an entrepreneur is that you get to make your own decisions. Hopefully they work out. Sometimes they don't.
So I liked how you talked about you wanted to follow your dad's footsteps, but you didn't want to be your dad.
Yeah.
I like the same way when you say you gotta find your voice.
Yeah.
So how are you able to take away like the things that you learned from your dad and implement it so that it's your authentic self as well?
Great. Yeah. I think when you're a kid and you're looking up to your parent and you decide to go into the same business or in business with them, it's hard to find those pieces of the puzzle that work. But what I noticed and I admire about my dad a lot is that he really knows how to surround himself with the right people. So I feel like he knew how to understand his own strengths and then figure out who else does he need around him that can complement what he's really good at. He also really leads by example. So has some core values: look sharp, feel sharp, be sharp. That's one of them, right? So it's that like presenting yourself that's important. I took a lot of that. The way that I do things is a little different. And of course, I'm 35 years younger than he is. So we've got a little bit more of a modern twist on things. And so I think I had to get the confidence in myself to say, all right, here's how my dad did things for 15 years or however long he was in the business before me. here's what I'm going out and learning myself and figuring out how to implement while still keeping the good parts that I admired, and then also just spinning it off and making it my own. And it can be tricky because you don't want to disappoint a boss, but nonetheless also your parent. So I think that took me a little bit too to actually, that's probably a lie because I had no problem telling my dad what I wanted to do. There can always be that. I think with anybody, whether your boss is your family member or just some other mentor, to make sure you've got a good enough working relationship where you can bring ideas to the table and feel like your ideas are heard, and then feel empowered and have the space to actually go and implement them. And again, something I admire about my dad, he always said, you work with me, not for me. And I try to make my own team feel that way. Like, I want to involve them in decision making. If we're going to implement something new, I bring them all in right from the beginning. I want to hear their voices. So I think that was how I got my own spin on things. I also try to embrace that and help my team do that too.
I like how you talked about how your dad is 35 years older than you. So like in the way that he ran his business was different than you,
Yeah.
but you were able to take away like key things that he did that made the business run successfully. So what were some things that you took away?
Yeah, certainly just the baseline core values, like treat people like family. We want everybody to have a great customer experience no matter what. We want to show up for them. We want to meet them where we are or where they are. And I think when you're focusing that much on your customers and making sure they have a good experience, it doesn't matter as much the little pieces of the puzzle, that those may change, but overall you want that same experience. And so for sure, that was the customer piece was a big thing. The community focus was another thing. I think my dad was a little bit ahead of the curve on, I'm giving him too many compliments today, on corporate social responsibility. And especially at the time, his business was as a mortgage broker. Mortgage brokers had a pretty bad reputation for a little while. And yet there were years where he was putting 10% of, profits back into the community, which is pretty big for a business or a small business, but big percentage, to really help people. And not every company has that value. So that's something that I've kept and embraced. And we try to support, sometimes it's as many as 30 different organizations a year through, whether it's money or volunteering or whatever, we want to be out there and have that presence. So I think those pillars, like how we treat our customers and how we treat our community, for sure, we want to keep that legacy going.
So you talked about how you knew you wanted to be in this industry, but did you know you wanted to take over the business as well?
I think I actually did from pretty early on. I definitely figured out that I was good at doing it and I enjoyed it. And like I said, I saw that my dad made a very good living out of it, came home really satisfied, was able to not only do the day-to-day work, but also do the community work. So what I love most is the diversity of what I get to do every day. And I think I was able to see that path pretty early on to figure out whether I decided to just be, as a loan officer, you can just focus on your own business. And it's almost like a franchise model kind of, right? Where you can make your own brand and you can have your own stuff going on, but you can also build out a team like we've done. And it did take me a little bit to realize, I think, that I enjoyed the team aspect. I definitely had more of a hustle mentality when I started out. I thought I had to get out of my dad's shadow by just working harder, working longer, doing better. And it was all like, Lindsay, trying to be the shining star. I think after I had my kids, they're 4.5 and 3 now. So about 4.5 years ago, I really shifted that mentality more to building out my team, leadership values, embracing that we can really achieve more and scale more as a team rather than just my hours are finite. I can't work 24 hours a day or clone myself. So how do you do that? You build out a team and you scale. And that made me more interested in sticking on a path.
So how were you able to shift your mindset from going out and hustling, trying to figure out by yourself, to now switch into more a team-based style so that you can scale faster?
Yeah. It was, so I had a lot of great business coaches who I worked with and work with still off and on. One of the coaches, her name's Colleen Del Vecchio. She when I was working with her to actually prepare for going out on maternity leave, started talking about ego, and not ego in a bad way, oh, you have too much of an ego, but just shifting that mentality from thinking that you have to do everything on your own to saying, I really want my team to thrive. And it was like taking the ego off of myself and putting it on my team. I think that was the big switch. And what caused it, I think it was really just the necessity. Like my first maternity leave that I had, I only didn't work for 10 days. So with my first, I only took 10 days off. And I thought at that point that I was like, whatever, I'll keep working and I'll have this newborn baby next to me and it'll be fine. Little did I know it's really hard to raise a kid. And so for my second maternity leave, I knew I actually wanted to take 4 months off. And so having that time frame and that deadline really made me need to get my team in place because I had no other choice. I don't know I wouldn't tell people to go out and make a deadline of having a kid, but if you can give yourself some kind of deadline, I think it does help to really be able to make that shift.
So how were you able to make that plan of that 4 month deadline that you had? How were you able to make that plan so that it works, so that the business can run successfully still?
Yeah. So again, my awesome team. So we really sat down and we looked at all of our roles and responsibilities. And I love this. Some people call it an acts of freedom or just like a roles chart or whatever. So starting with whoever's the leader, manager, CEO, whatever, literally write down every single thing you're doing in a day, personal and work, just all of it. Get it all out there. It's so eye-opening to see what you're actually spending your time on. And then basically from there, you want to ask yourself, what's my money-making activities and what brings me joy? And if it's not going to, and I say money making, but it could also just be like getting to a goal. It may not be financial, maybe it's something else. But if it's not giving you that return on investment and it's also not bringing you happiness, you want to push it off to someone else. So it really helps to figure out, how do you delegate? And then what does that secondary role have to look like? So create the secondary role from there. Now that person may be like, wait a minute, you're putting all this new work on me. Now they need support from someone else. So you create this chart for your whole team. Now, even if you're just starting off or you're a one-person show, there's so many resources available that can take things off your plate now. I'll give you an example. Grocery shopping, right? My husband and I, we do this sometimes for our family too. What are we all doing? What are our roles? What should we be doing differently? We're like, why are we wasting an hour and a half going to the grocery store? My time's more valuable. His time's more valuable. We want to spend it with our kids or whatever else. Let's use Instacart. There's stuff that's so simple. Free tools too. With AI, you don't want to make some kind of, I don't know, something you have to make for your business, figure it out in ChatGPT. So even if you're sitting there thinking, oh, lady, this sounds great, but I don't have other staff to help me, you can still peel back your responsibilities and utilize tools and maybe free services that could get you there. So that was a big part of the planning. When I looked at my roles and I said, how am I going to take 4 months off for maternity leave? And basically, I just had to strip it down to what are the most basic requirements to keep the business running, then use that chart to allocate it off to everybody else, or just stop doing it, right? Don't doom scroll social media for 2 hours a day. That's not getting you anywhere. Just take that right off the chart.
How was it like coming back after the 4 months? Were you able to still feel like you're part of the team?
Yeah, so I did still stay. I had to make sure the bills were paid and everything was run. What I ended up focusing on when I did that chart and peeled everything off was reputation and finances. So we had to keep making money and be able to do everything. And I had to make sure that our reputation was still solid. If it wasn't about that, my team handled the rest. They're amazing. A lot of them have been with me for 10 years now. They did everything so awesome. So I only had to jump in for a couple of those things. Now, coming back in was an interesting transition because at the same time, the mortgage world changed a lot. And so it went from being like a booming mortgage time to a really bust mortgage time. So it was good timing in a way because then I came back in when I was going to be more needed anyway, just because of the economic cycle. But what happened, and this still happens all the time, I started stepping on people's toes because they were like, wait a minute, I just did this without you for 4 months. Now you're coming back in here and telling me, how, you're going to take back all these things. We actually revisit that exercise pretty frequently, maybe a couple times a year even, or certainly if there's some kind of change or we want to grow or whatever, because I want to always make sure that I'm not accidentally creeping back into roles that I shouldn't, that I'm also growing and doing things that are making me achieve my goals and making me happy. And then likewise, I want to assess what my team's roles are and make sure that they are also ideally enjoying their jobs, doing the stuff that's the best activities for them too. And then do we need to hire anybody else to fill in the gaps?
So how much team members did you have at that point?
So I have 8 people on my team right now, and it's been pretty consistent. We're usually anywhere, so it's not a huge group, but we're usually anywhere between like 6 to 12 at any given point in time.
And what were you say, like you said you were pushed off some assignments to your team members. So what were some things that you were given to your team members that you just didn't have time to do yourself?
Yeah, anything that is, like I said, not a high return on investment or doesn't make me happy. Anything really that's administrative. Marketing is a tricky one because for me, I love it. I love thinking about the strategy and the structure and the cool content and all this stuff, but it's a time suck too. So that's been a tough one. That's one it's still hovering on my list. But yeah, anything really that was paperwork driven, some of the more customer service responsibilities that were more so service than needing a really direct sell. And also it helps with training too. So I can say, do I really need to be the one doing this, or do I just need to train somebody who maybe can even do it better than I can? I just haven't given them the time of day to do it. But I would say mostly especially just the stuff that you look at your calendar and say, I don't even want to do this, and it keeps falling to the wayside. Maybe you just need to get somebody else to do it. Or it takes 3 hours to do this, but an intern could maybe help you do it. Put those off to the side so you can launch from there.
So for you, what was like you said your sweet spot was 6 to 12 team members. So why was that like a spot that works for you?
Right now, with the team members that we have, first of all, mortgages can be fluid as far as how much staff you need, just because inherently during the pandemic, for example, mortgage rates went down to 2 and 3%. So not only were a lot of people wanting to buy houses, but there's also something you can do with a mortgage, which is you can redo it. If you already own a house, say your rate's high, it's called refinancing. You can get a new mortgage at a lower rate. So not only did we have people buying houses a lot, we had them redoing their mortgages too. So that was almost like double the amount of work coming in. So we grow during those kinds of times. Now mortgage rates are on the higher side. So people are still buying and selling, but there's not really as many refinances. So then the team may have to shrink a little bit. That's really tough as a manager because hiring and training takes a lot of time. And then also laying people off is not a fun thing to have to do. But so part of it's based on what's going on in the environment. And then the other part, of course, is just, are we trying to grow? Are we wanting to move into a new territory? Are we looking to specialize in some new loan product or something like that? We have a really great fit right now for everybody, skill set wise and personality wise too. So again, it feels like I should knock on wood, but a perfect vibe.
So for you, when do you know it's time? You talked about how like when it gets busy, but like when do you know it's like time? Okay, yeah, we do need to have more people on the team, or when do you know it's like maybe we need to let some people go?
Yeah, letting people go is really capacity related. Pretty much just if there's not enough work to do I feel like people always say this, but you hang on to people maybe for too long in a way because it's really hard to separate the business decision from the reality the reality of the business decision to the fact that you love your people who you work with. As far as growth goes, I really base it on what my staff feels. Are they feeling, I can tell they're working at 110% capacity. That's way too much. I think at least in my space, you want to keep people at 80% of their capacity so that they're not just getting totally burnt out. And so they can also cover vacations and everything. So it's always keeping that finger on the pulse to see how everybody's doing.
So as a leader and when you're going through the hiring process, what are some things like characteristics that you're looking for inside the person?
Yeah. I've had a lot of people say that they have funny interview questions or they almost not trick people, but on the way to the interview time, they'll say, hey, could you just stop and grab me this newspaper on your way into your interview? It'll give them some task to do. I don't know. I've been lucky that mostly people have given me really good referrals for employees too. So their references have been really solid. And I like to think that I can get a pretty good vibe from people from the interview process. I also involve my team. So oftentimes I'll have whoever they're going to be working most directly with almost do a panel and ask some of the initial questions, and they'll weed it down and then give me the final folks to make the decision on. But it's, especially with such a small group, it's got to be a good skill set and just overall good fit as far as the personality goes too.
What has been your biggest challenge so far when it comes to running this business?
I think the challenge mostly is sometimes I want to control what I can't control, and I get stuck on those things. Like, I can't control that interest rates have been in the upper sixes, low sevens recently. It was a lot more fun when they were 2 or 3% because every conversation I had, somebody could get a mortgage. It was easier to qualify. It was more affordable. Way more fun to tell somebody their mortgage payment's going to be $2,000 a month instead of $4,000 a month. So I think that staying focused on what I can control, like where I'm putting my efforts, how I'm marketing, who I'm talking to, who I surround myself by, is what I need to focus on and not get caught up in the stuff that I can't control.
So let's talk about the process of what it's like to be able to, when it comes to people come to you for mortgage, like how are you able to try to find like a medium where they're happy even though they might not be able to get like the rate that they want?
Yeah. So what we start off with a conversation. Say you just came in right now. I would basically just keep it really conversational. What are your goals? What are you hoping to be able to do? We talk about what towns you want to look in, what type of house. A lot of times people look online at houses or drive around and look at houses before they come in and do the financial side. Really should be the other way around, but it's a lot more fun to look at the houses than look at the budget. But I can figure out what have they been scrolling at 3:00 in the morning? What do they think they want to buy? From there, then we talk about their financials. In the mortgage world, it's basically income and employment history, your savings, how much money you have saved, and then your credit scores and your debt payment history. So we run through that. And then basically we say, all right, here's what you want to buy. Here's what your finances look like. We also ask, what's a comfortable budget? You're hoping to buy this house for $500,000. What do you want your monthly payment to look like? What do you want your down payment, how much money you're actually putting toward the house to be? And then I just math it all out for them. And I show them, all right, here's what you wanted. Here's what the actual numbers look like. Hopefully those two things are in line. Sometimes they're not. And so we have to reassess. Then I also say, here's what you wanted. Here's what it actually looks like. Now, based on your financials, here's what you can qualify to do. Because part of it's what they're comfortable doing. And then also, what can they do? What are they going to be able to get for a mortgage? Again, hopefully they can qualify for what they want to do. And hopefully they're comfortable with that payment. If they're not, then we make some adjustments. I always try to leave people with a plan. So even if they can't do what they want to do this second, we say, hey, look it, you've got to, whatever it is, pay some of your debt off, save more money, get a higher paying job. Not that any of that's easy or going to happen overnight, but I think the fear that some people have, and what a lot of like big online lenders and stuff do, is they just tell you a no, but they don't tell you why and they don't tell you how. So a big part of our conversation is educating people. We do a lot of homebuyer seminars in person or online. A lot of them are online now. And a lot of our conversations are really just finance 101 because you don't always get that in schools.
So what has been like the biggest thing that you've noticed when it comes to customers that most people wouldn't really understand when they're trying to get their first mortgage for their house?
Yeah. What I think confuses a lot of people is that mortgage, the way you qualify for a mortgage, it's not actually the purchase price that you're qualifying for. It's what the monthly payment is. So that's the confusing concept to see. It's all based on something called your total debt compared to your total income. And so sometimes people say, wait a minute, I've got $100,000 in the bank. How come I can't go buy a house? And I'm like, because your income isn't there yet, or you have too much debt. And so there's not enough room to carry a mortgage payment. So I think that really it's understanding how important your debt payment history, credit scores, and also having good income is. It's not just about how much money you have saved, because there's actually a lot of programs that help with letting people have lower down payment or down payment assistance. So sometimes the savings is almost the least on the list of things to worry about. Yeah.
So why is it that your income is more important than actually the amount of money that you can put up for the house?
Yeah, it's all based on how much, there's an equation basically. How much can you afford based on your income? So if say you bring in $4,000 a month, we're only allowed to use 50% of that as a new housing payment. So someone that brings in $4,000 a month, that would be $2,000 that's left over. But if they have other debt too, say they have, this is what a lot of young people do, they buy a big fancy car. So if they only had $2,000 for their whole debt carrying, and they're driving a car that has a $1,000 a month payment on it, guess what? Now they can only carry a mortgage of $1,000, that leftover piece. That's the piece of the puzzle that a lot of people miss, and especially young people with student loans too. That's tough because that eats into how much leftover income they have to actually pay for that monthly mortgage payment.
So what are some ways that somebody would be able to make sure that their debt to income really is better, so that when they come to you, they're able to afford the house that they want?
Be really careful about the debt you open. A lot of people, you get out of high school, you can open a credit card, or you're going to go to college and you open student loans and you don't really think about that you actually have to pay those back. So with credit cards, it's okay to have them. You just want to try to keep them paid off every month. Like you want to just use it a little for gas and then just pay it off. You don't want to go out and charge it up to the whole credit limit. A lot of people do that. They turn 18, they open up a bunch of credit cards, they think they can go and build their empire off of credit debt, and then they don't know how to pay them back because they don't make enough income. So I think living within your means and being really careful about income creep, basically, or lifestyle creep, I should say, where all of a sudden you're making a little more money, so you start spending more money. Try to be really conscious of that, and instead of just spending it on frivolous stuff, start to save it. Save it for a house, save it for opening your business, whatever it is, instead of going out and buying the new whatever, golf clubs or car or whatever the hobby is in that moment.
So can you tell us like your favorite experience so far in this business?
Oh gosh, there's so many. Favorite experience, what's so cool is every day, right? We're helping people buy a house, and those conversations, every person is different. Every person has different goals. They're all awesome. It's so hard to pick one. I would say my favorites in general are whenever we're helping someone who thinks they couldn't do it originally, right? Like your question was perfect. Where do we start? It's so amazing to see someone who called me and said, I have no idea where to start. And then whether it's a week later, a month later, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they own a home. And it's just making that initial phone call, which that's tough for people, right? That's a scary thing, to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and just say, I don't know anything about my finances, but I want to try to buy a house. And like I said before, they don't teach it in schools. This book is so great because there's not a lot of curriculum around basic financial management. How do you maintain your credit scores? What kind of bank account should you have? How do you start a retirement account? Nonetheless, buy a house and open a business and do all the other stuff.
So in each order, like what you just talked about, like what would be like the most important when it comes to starting like a checks account versus trying to have a retirement plan? What would be like the most important, like especially as somebody that's 19 like myself that's trying to save? What would be like the most important steps?
Yeah, I have to disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a lowly mortgage officer. But in my opinion, I would definitely open a you want a checking or a savings bank account, and then you want to have probably ideally 6 months of all of your expenses. You just want to have an emergency account. So your checking is just for your normal everyday money, payroll coming in, groceries, gas, housing expense going. But then you want to try to allocate, there's different percentages, but a decent amount of your income to just set aside in a savings where you're building up at least 6 months of whatever all those expenses are. Just leave it there. Let it sit there. There's different savings accounts. You probably want one with a higher interest rate. There's high yield accounts. You want to do that first. If your employer, if you get right out of high school or right out of college and you end up with a full-time job and your employer has a retirement plan, especially if they'll do any type of match where they're actually giving you money toward it, yeah, start doing that. But make sure you've just got the basics established first. People, I think, get caught up in so many fancy bells and whistles, but it's get your job, figure out your budget, don't live beyond your means. I know this all sounds like simple and it's so hard, and fund that reserve account. And then start focusing on building your credit scores, because it's really hard to get a car or get a line of credit for a business or get a mortgage if you don't have your income, your savings, and then your credit established.
I just have a couple more questions.
Yeah.
So in my book, Tony, he talks about the LBW,
Yep.
the long, lonely, boring work.
Yep.
Can you tell us about the LBW inside of your career?
Yeah. I think, I hate to call any work boring, but I think that for me, I'm a dreamer. I see big goals and I want to get to them right away. And sometimes it ends up being with a lot of unfinished things. I was telling you about the podcast I started. I actually started one 4 years ago or 5 years ago during the pandemic, and then it fizzled, and then I picked it up again. I tend to have these cool ideas that I want to do. For me, the long, boring work is the steps to get there. It's the implementation of it. And I can't even name one specific part of the implementation. It's just all of the implementation, frankly. And so what I've learned about myself is that if I'm really good at strategy and being the thinker and the person that's on the camera screen and all that kind of stuff, I better have a really good team behind me that's going to actually pick up all the pieces and help me get to wherever it is. And maybe that's, again, if you're just starting out a business, I say team. It could be your best friend. It could be your parents. It could be ChatGPT, like whoever, whatever support system you can have behind you to fill in those gaps. But that's the long, boring work for me, is just, okay, now I got to make my schedule, get all these things done, do the paperwork. Yeah.
I just have one more question for you. And it's, what's one fun fact about yourself that nobody really knows?
One fun fact, and you ask it every time, and I should have had something prepared. One fun fact about me. I think it's that I love hobbies. I do too many things and probably half do them. Kind of like I was saying about being the dreamer and not implementing it. But so I have the Applied Mortgage brand. We also have some rental properties. We have a farm. My husband has a woodworking business that we've started and grown together. I love to run. I love to read. We have the kids and family. I should have probably said them first, but I was talking hobbies. Like, I will always try something first. And I think I've been that way since I was little too. I just always loved doing a lot of different things. I don't know if that's a fun fact, but I think it goes hand in hand with entrepreneurship. It's like always wanting to try to figure out another part of the puzzle and just stay interested in different things in life.
I just want to thank you again for coming on. I learned a lot, so I know the audience definitely would.
I hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
I learned a ton. I can't wait to read your book more.
Appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on again. I want to thank every single one of you for all the support that you have shown me in this past year, my journey of becoming the realistic CEO. So ways that you can support even more is by going onto my website, www.realisticceo.com, and ordering your copy of the Realistic CEO book and the Realistic CEO podcast magazine as well. See you in the next episode. Peace.